5 on Finniston Farm, Chapter 15, Digging for the Secret Tunnel. "How can we get permission to dig?" asked Anne. "I mean, will we be allowed to?" "I don't see why not. Mr. Henning has only been given permission to dig in one place," said Julian. "I bet we'd get permission to dig just here. It's a pretty good way from the castle site anyway." "Why shouldn't we just dig and see if anyone stops us?" said George. "If Mr. Philpot stops us, we could tell him what we're really doing. He'd probably let us then. But whatever happens, we don't want Mr. Henning to know what we've discovered, or think we've discovered." "Well, what shall we say then, if he asks why we're digging?" said Anne. "Say silly things, joke about it," said Dick. "Twins, have you work to do this morning? Can you find us spades, do you think?" "Yes, you can have our spades, and Dad's old ones too," said Harry. "We wish we could help, but we've tons to do, and we're late already." "Oh dear, and I promised that George and I would help in the kitchen," said Anne, "and pick peas for dinner and pod them, and get more raspberries. Can you and Dick dig all on your own, Ju?" "Good heavens, yes," said Julian. "It'll be slower with just two of us digging, but we'll soon get deep down, you'll see. Anyway, we could all take turns this afternoon, perhaps if the twins finish their work." "We will. We'll do it at top speed," said Harry and Harriet together. "Now we'll get some spades for you." They raced off with Snippet beside them, and the two girls went down the hill more slowly, feeling very thrilled. If only they could dig down and find the secret passage from the chapel to the cellars of the old castle. Timmy felt the excitement and wagged his tail happily. He was always happy when George was thrilled about anything. Harriet soon brought 2 big spades and 2 smaller ones for the boys. They were heavy, and she panted as she carried them up the hill. "Good girl, or is it good boy?" asked Dick, as he took the spades. "Wait, it's Harriet, isn't it? You've no scar on your hand." Harriet grinned and ran off swiftly to join her brother in the farm work. That was their task. Julian gazed after her. "They're good kids," he said, as he turned to drive his spade into the earth. "Worth 100 juniors. Funny how some children are made of such good stuff and others aren't worth a penny. Well, Dick, go to it. This earth is pretty hard. I wish we could borrow one of those machines the men are using up there." They dug hard and were soon very hot indeed. They stripped themselves to their shorts, but were still far too hot. They greeted Anne with joy when she laboured up the slope, carrying a jug of cool lemonade and some buns. "I say, you've made quite a hole already," she said. "How far down do you think the tunnel will be?" "Well, not too far down, really," said Dick, taking a long drink of the lemonade. "This is super, Anne. Thanks awfully. We've dug into the burrow, and we're following it at the moment, hoping it will enter the secret tunnel before we're too tired to dig any more." "I say, here comes Junior," said Anne suddenly, looking up the slope. Sure enough, it was the American boy, feeling quite brave now that neither Timmy nor Snippet were about. He stopped a little way away and shouted, "What do you think you're doing, digging in our hill?" "Go away and lose yourself," shouted back Dick. "This isn't your hill. If you can dig, so can we." "Copycats," shouted Junior. "My pop's laughing his head off 'bout you." "Well, tell him to pick it up before it rolls down the hill," yelled Dick. "Clear off." Junior watched them for a little while, puzzled, and then went off up the hill, presumably to report to his father. Anne laughed and went back to the farmhouse. "As his pop doesn't know a thing about the secret passage, he must think we're off our heads digging here," said Julian with a chuckle. We'll let him think so. He'll be off his head with rage when he finds out what we're really doing, and he won't know that till we're in the cellars." Dick laughed and wiped his forehead again. "I wish this burrow would come to an end, and I hope to goodness it does lead into the side of the tunnel. I don't want to have to dig up half the hillside. The ground's so hard and dry." "Well, thank goodness it's getting sandy here," said Julian, driving his spade deeper down. He suddenly gave a cry. "I say, my spade went right down by itself then. I believe I've come to the secret passage. The burrow must go right through one side of it." He was right. The rabbit hole ran sideways and down and into a passage. The boys dug feverishly now, panting, their hair falling over their foreheads, perspiration dripping off their faces. Soon they had a deep hole, fairly wide, and at the bottom of it a way into the tunnel beneath. They lay down and peered into it. "It's only about 4 feet below the surface," said Dick. "We might have had to do much more digging than this. Phew, I'm hot." "It must be dinner time," said Julian. "I don't really like to leave our hole now that we've got down to the tunnel, and yet we simply must have something to eat. I'm ravenous." "So am I, but if we leave the hole unguarded, that pest of a junior might come along and climb down and find the passage," said Dick. "Look, here comes George with old Tim. I wonder if she'd leave him here to guard the hole." George was delighted to hear their news. She gazed down the hole in great excitement. "How deeply you've dug," she said. "No wonder you're hot. My word, if Mr. Henning knew what you've found, he'd be down here in 2 shakes of a duck's tail." "He certainly would," said Julian soberly. "That's what we're afraid of, or that Snoopy Junior might climb down into the hole if he came along. He's been here already to see what we're doing." "We're scared of going in to dinner in case one of them comes along and investigates the hole while it's unguarded," said Dick. "And we wondered if—" But George interrupted him, almost as if she knew what he was going to say. "I'll leave Timmy here on guard while you come down to dinner," she said. "He won't let anyone come within yards of it." "Thanks, old thing," said the boys gratefully, and went off down the hill with George, leaving Timmy behind. "On guard, Timmy," said George. "On guard. Don't let anyone come near that hole." "Woof," said Timmy, understanding at once and looking fiercely all around about him. He lay down with a small growl. Let anyone come near the boys' hole if they dare. They did dare. But when they saw Timmy leaping to his feet, the hackles on his neck thick and upright, and heard his deep, continuous growl, Junior and his father thought better of it, and went on down the hill to have dinner at the farmhouse. Poor Mr. Durlston trailed behind them, almost knocked out by the heat of the sun. "Silly kids," said Mr. Henning to Junior, "thinking it's clever to dig just about where we're digging. What do you suppose they'll find down there? Another kitchen midden?" Junior sent a stone scudding along towards Timmy, and then fled for his life as the dog came bounding angrily down the slope. Even Mr. Henning hurried. He didn't like Timmy either. That afternoon the twins, Julian, Dick, George, Anne, and Snippet all climbed the hill to the hole where Tim still lay watching for intruders. They brought him 2 fine bones and a jug of water. He was very pleased indeed. Snippet danced round, hoping for a bite at a bone, and the jackdaw, his wing apparently quite recovered now, dared to go and peck at the bigger bone, even though Timmy growled warningly. The twins were thrilled to see the deep hole. "Can't we go down now?" they said eagerly, both together. "Yes, it would be a jolly good time to let ourselves slide into the tunnel," said Julian. "All the men working on the castle site have gone off to have dinner at the little village pub and haven't yet come back, and the Hennings and Mr. Durlston are safely at the farmhouse." "I'll go first," said Dick, and lowered himself into the hole. He held on to the grassy edges and poked hard with his feet to widen the opening into the tunnel. Then he let himself slide down until his legs were out of the rabbit hole and dangled through the wall of the tunnel. "Here we go," he said, and let himself drop. Whoosh! He slid right into a dark, musty tunnel and landed on soft earth. "Chuck me down a torch," he shouted. "It's pitch dark in here. Did you remember to bring our torches, George?" Yes, George had 4. "Look out," she said. "Here comes one," and she dropped it down the hole. She had already switched it on, so Dick saw it coming and caught it neatly. He shone it into the dark place around him. "Yes, it is a tunnel," he shouted. "The secret passage, no doubt about it. I say, isn't this great? Come on down, all of you. Let's share in the find together. Let's walk right up to the castle cellars. Come on, everybody. Come on." Chapter 16. Up the tunnel and into the cellars. Dick held up his torch to the hole so that the others might see their way. One by one they slid into the dark tunnel, too excited for words. Timmy came too, and so did Snippet, but the jackdaw thought better of it and remained at the enlarged opening of the burrow, chacking loudly. The children swung their torches to and fro. "That must be the way down to the old chapel," said Julian, his torch shining down the dark tunnel. No one could stand upright just there except Timmy, for the roof was low. He sniffed suspiciously here and there and kept close to George. "Well, come on," said Julian, his voice shaking a little with excitement. "We'll go straight up and see where the passage ends. My word, I can hardly wait to see what's at the top." They made their way slowly up the passage. There had been roof falls here and there, but not enough to matter. Tree roots, withered and twining, sometimes caught their feet. "Funny," said Harry in astonishment. "There aren't any trees growing on the hillside here. Why the roots then?" "They may be the remains of the roots of long-ago trees that did once grow on the hill," said Julian, shining his torch up the passage, hoping against hope that there would be no serious obstacle to their journey. "Hello, what's this at my feet?" 2 feathers. Now, how in the world did they get here? It was a puzzle. The children examined them earnestly by the light of their torches. Feathers, looking quite new too. How did they get there? Was there any other way into the passage, and had the birds found it? Dick gave a shout of laughter that made everyone jump. "We're idiots. They're 2 of the jackdaw's feathers. They must have dropped out of his bitten wing when he went down the burrow and up this passage with Snippet after him." "Of course. Why on earth didn't I think of that?" said Julian. They went on upwards once more, and then Julian suddenly stopped again. A curious humming noise had come down the dark, low tunnel, a throbbing that seemed to get right inside their heads. "What's that?" said Anne in great alarm. "I don't like it." They all stood there and felt, like Anne, that the noise was indeed inside their heads. They shook them, put their fingers into their ears, but it was no good. The strange throbbing went on and on. "This is a bit too mysterious for me," said Anne, scared. "I don't think I want to go on." The noise stopped, and they all felt better at once, but almost immediately it started again. To everyone's surprise, George began to laugh. "It's all right. It's only those men at work on the castle site. It's their drills we can hear, throbbing through the hillside and down this passage right into our ears. They must be back from lunch. Cheer up, everybody." They all smiled in relief, though Anne's hands were still shaking a little as she held up her torch to shine through the black darkness. "There's not an awful lot of air here," she said. "I hope we can soon get into the cellars." "They can't be far," said Julian. "This tunnel goes in a pretty straight line, just as we thought it would. Where it curves, it's probable that the long-ago men who made it were forced to burrow round tree roots that blocked their way. Anyway, as we can hear the drills so loudly now, we can't be far from the castle site." They were nearer than they thought. Julian's torch suddenly shone on the remains of a great door lying on the ground before him, the door that once shut off the cellars from the passage. The tunnel ceased just there, and the torches shone on a vast underground place, silent, full of shadows. "We're there," said Julian in a whisper that went scurrying round in the darkness and came back as a strange echo that said, "There, there, there, there." "That fallen door must have been the one made all those years gone by," said Anne in awe. She touched the corner of it with her foot, and the wood crumpled into dust with a queer little sigh. Snippet pushed in front of them and ran into the cellars. He gave a short bark as if to say, "Come on, don't be afraid. I've been here before." "Oh, Snippet, be careful," said Anne, half afraid that everything would crumble away at the sound of Snippet's pattering feet. "Let's go on, but carefully," said Julian. "Everything will be ready to crumble into dust, unless it's made of metal. It's a marvel that door was preserved like that. It looks good enough, but I'm sure if any of us sneezed, it would be gone." "Don't make me laugh, please, Ju," said Dick, stepping carefully around the fallen door. "Even a laugh might do damage down there." Soon they were all in the blackness of the underground cellars. They flashed their torches around. "What a vast place," said Julian. "Can't see any dungeons, though." "Thank goodness," said Harriet and Anne together. They had both dreaded coming across old bones of long-forgotten prisoners. "Look, there's an archway," said George, shining her torch to the right. "A fine semicircular arch it is too, made of stone. And there's another, look. They must lead into a main underground chamber, I should think. There's nothing much to see just here, except heaps of dirt. It smells so musty too." "Well, follow me carefully," said Julian, and led the way towards the stone archways, his torch shining brightly. They came to one of the beautiful rounded arches and stood there, all four torches shining brightly into a large underground room. "No cellars here, but just one great underground storeroom," said Julian. "The roof was shored up with great beams, see? Some of them have fallen, and those stone arches must have borne much more of the weight too. Not one of those has fallen. They must have stood there for centuries. What wonderful workmanship!" Dick and the twins were more interested in the great mass of jumble scattered around the walls. It was covered with dust that rose lightly into the air when Timmy brushed against anything. Snippet ran round happily, sniffing everywhere and sneezing every now and again as the fine dust went up his nose. "Any treasures, do you think?" whispered Anne, and the echo came back weirdly, whispering too. "Whispers seem to echo back more than our ordinary voices," said Julian. "Hello, what's this?" They shone their torches onto the floor, where lay what looked like a heap of blackened metal. Julian bent down and then gave a loud exclamation. "Do you see what this is? A suit of armour, almost perfect still. Look, though, it must be ages old, and here's another and another. Were they old ones thrown out, or spare ones? Look at this helmet. Grand." He kicked it gently with his foot, and it gave out a metallic sound and rolled away a little. "Would that be valuable now?" asked Harry anxiously. "Valuable? Worth its weight in gold, I should think," said Julian, such excitement in his voice that everyone felt even more thrilled. Harriet called to him urgently, "Julian, here's a chest of some sort, quick!" They went slowly over to where she stood, for they had already learnt that any quick movement raised clouds of fine, choking dust. She pointed to a great dark chest, its corners bound with iron, and with iron strapping all around it. It was made of wood, as black with age as the iron itself. "What's inside, do you think?" whispered Harriet, and at once her whisper echoed from every corner. "You think, you think, you think." Timmy went to sniff at the chest, and to his amazement it disintegrated at once. Slowly, softly, the sides and the great lid fell into dust that settled gently on the ground around. Only the iron corners and strapping were left. It was strange to watch something crumble away before their eyes. Like magic, thought Anne. As the wooden sides of the chest crumbled, something shone out brightly in the light of the torches, something that moved and slid out of the chest as the sides fell away, fell with a jingling, clinking sound, curious to hear in that silent darkness. The children stared in astonishment, hardly believing their eyes. Anne clutched Julian and made him jump. "Ju, what is it? Is it gold?" Julian bent to pick up one of the rolling pieces. "Yes, it's gold, no doubt about it. Gold never tarnishes. It keeps bright forever. These are gold coins of some sort, treasured and hidden away. There couldn't have been time to take them when the lady fled with her children, and no one else would be able to get them, for the castle was burnt down and buried by the falling walls. This hoard of gold must have lain here untouched all these long years." "Waiting for us to come," said George. "Twins, your mother and father needn't worry about their farm any more. There's enough gold there to buy them all the tractors they want, and that may be only the beginning of the treasures down here. Julian, there's another chest, look, like this one, but smaller, and beginning to fall to pieces. Let's see what's inside. More gold, I hope." But the second chest did not hold gold pieces. It held a different kind of treasure. One side had burst open, and its contents had dribbled out. "Rings," said Anne, picking up two from the dust in which they lay. "A golden belt," said George, "and look, these tarnished chains must be necklaces because they're set with blue stones. This must be where the jackdaw found that ring." "We've found something else too," called Harry, his excited voice making everyone jump. "Look, racks of swords and daggers. Some are beautifully carved too." Clamped to the wall were iron racks held in place by great iron rods driven deep into the hard earth of the wall. Some had loosened, and the racks hung crooked, their knives and swords askew, or lay on the floor. Snippet ran to pick one up, just as he had done before when he and Nosy first went into the cellars by themselves. "What wonderful swords," said Julian, picking one up. "My word, this one's heavy. I can hardly hold it. Good gracious, what's that?" Something had fallen from the roof of the cellar in which they were standing, a great piece of old wood that had originally been placed there as part of the roofing. At the same time, the continual hum of the drilling above rose to a roar that made the children jump. Julian gave a shout. "Out of here, quickly," he yelled. "Those men will soon be through the roof, and it may suddenly fall and bury us. We'll have to go at once." He snatched a dagger from the rack, and, still with the sword in his hand, ran back to the entrance of the secret passage, pulling Anne with him. The twins were last of all, for they had run to get a handful of the gold and two of the necklaces and rings. They must show their mother a few of the treasures, they must. Just as they reached the entrance, more of the roof fell. "We'll have to stop this excavating," panted Julian, looking back. "If the roof falls in, it may destroy many of the old treasures there." They hurried into the dark, low tunnel, feeling more excited than they had ever felt in their lives. Timmy led the way, glad to think that they were going to be out in the open air once more. "What will Mother say?" the twins kept saying to one another. "Whatever will she say?"